Now to Malcolm Turnbull and his new book, Smashing Scott Morrison. Excerpts in several newspapers today showed what Turnbull's up to. You've got Turnbull of all people, calling Prime Minister Scott Morrison brittle, a plotter, a narcissist. The hypocrisy. Are there no mirrors in Turnbull's mansion? I've always picked Turnbull for a narcissist and a plotter, a man who'd put himself first above any party that was mad enough to make him leader. Now, I spotted Turnbull a mile off when Tony Abbott was Prime Minister. There was Turnbull, one of his ministers, plotting and leaking and white-anting, desperate to be the Liberal leader himself. And talk about brittle. Turnbull hit the roof when I called out his scheming, and other journalists rushed to protect their fellow leftists.
He proclaims loudly that he is a friend of the government. Well, with friends like Bolt, we don't need any enemies.
With Liberals like Malcolm Turnbull, who needs the Labor Party?
It's really you stirring the pot here.
No, it wasn't me stirring the pot. Turnbull was stirring the pot, and he did end up knifing Abbott and replacing him, but made such a rotten Prime Minister himself that the Liberals finally got smart and sacked him. Now, the Liberals were, as I say, catastrophically stupid to have made Turnbull leader in the first place. I said so at the time because character counts. Character counts in politics too. And Turnbull had none. That is so obvious from the leaks in the papers today from his new book, which is about to be published. There's Turnbull revenging himself on everyone he thinks brought down his magnificent self as Prime Minister. Now, I said he lacked character. Lesson one from this book: if you meet Turnbull, if you've got any dealings with him, or if you write to him or phone him, watch what you say. Do not assume that he won't betray your confidences to the world, because look at this book. Betraying confidences is what he does again and again, things that people told him in private, people including Morrison, including many other Liberal colleagues. And he does that, seems clear to me, to hurt Morrison and to make Morrison distrust and fear and hate his senior ministers, ministers such as Finance Minister Matthias Cormann and fellow Conservative Peter Dutton, the Home Affairs Minister. Both of them resented by Turnbull for voting against him. For instance, Malcolm Turnbull says that Cormann, the Finance Minister, privately told him that Morrison was emotional, narcissistic and untrustworthy, and told Turnbull that regularly. And he says Cormann and Turnbull were at their wits' end as to how to manage Morrison when he was Treasurer. Turnbull says, as Matthias said, we have a Treasurer problem, and his problem was one of trust. Turnbull repeatedly paints Morrison as a man you can't trust, a backstabber. From Turnbull, this is just bizarre. Chief backstabber. Yes, Morrison, a backstabber, even though Morrison publicly stood by Turnbull during the very last days of his leadership.
Can you rule out having any leadership ambitions?
Me?
Yeah.
This is my leader.
There you go.
And I'm ambitious for him.
Yeah, good on you. Thanks, Gomo.
Turnbull says, well, in fact, he reckons Morrison was just being two-faced there because Morrison did the same thing when Tony Abbott was knifed. He says Morrison publicly said he'd voted for Abbott in the leadership ballot, but in fact had worked closely with Turnbull himself to ensure that Morrison's supporters voted against Abbott. And Turnbull says he thinks Morrison played exactly the same trick with him. I've come to conclude, he said, that Scott was playing a double game. For Turnbull to whinge that what was done to him was exactly what he did to Abbott is so rich, this bloke. Anyway, Morrison has denied that he'd played these tricks in the past, but I can't say that many of his colleagues believe him. Yet Turnbull, right, he just keeps attacking Morrison for exactly the weaknesses that are Turnbull's own. For instance, he says that Morrison was brittle emotionally and easily offended. He had a blustering manner that could easily be mistaken for bullying, and that the truth was that Labor lost the last election, that the coalition, after the August coup to remove Emperor Turnbull, did not deserve to win. Again, character, lack of. The reason that Turnbull gives to the Liberals not deserving to win was simply that it had got rid of him. The colossal vanity of this man. They got rid of him because he was a dud, a failure, hadn't won an opinion poll for a year and a half. And it's books like this that should make all Australians wonder what kind of people lead them. How much do these leaders deserve your trust? Some do. But then you get a Billy McMahon or a Kevin Rudd or a Malcolm Turnbull. No character. And does it show?